everybody, we're back here in my workshop. My name's Colwin Way, it's 4 o'clock and we are here for the Skills Centre at Home Live videos. Today we are going to go back to turning, we're going to make something, but I wanted to look at a couple of bit of particular timber. Now I live on the Jurassic Coast on the Devon-Dorset border, and it's famous or well known for its what we call Riviera palm, and there's two types of Riviera palm that are most commonly seen around the area. One is the cabbage plant or the cabbage palm, and you'll know that it's got very smooth bark, the cabbage palm, and very spiky leaves in bushes, and this time of the year it comes out in a real honeysuckle type of blossom and smell. Really nice. We've got one in our garden actually. This is just a trimming from my tree in the garden. It's a little bit too small to use, and at this stage it's a little bit of soft in the middle, so probably couldn't use that. What we're going to look at today though is quite a tricky one to convert into blanks. So I want to look firstly at how we're going to do that. Charlie, if you can pan down to this monster by the lathe here. This is known as a fan palm, Japanese fan palm, red fan palm. It's a wonderful tree to look at. You get them growing, if you go on holiday for instance, you'll see them very often growing up the avenues there. We get a lot on the Riviera, the English Riviera down here. But fan palm has its own issues. If you look at what grows on the outside, it's layer upon layer on layer of thick blanketing sort of hair. It's like a woolly mammoth, how I like to describe it. Now you take a chainsaw to that, you're going to run into problems. It's going to be very dangerous. In fact, any chainsaw use, I recommend massively that you go on a good amount of chainsaw courses before you even attempt to use one. I've been on several courses throughout my life, and they're really good courses to go on, not only for maintenance but also for use. Cross-cutting, probably one of the most dangerous parts of chainsaw use. So you would think felling, but cross-cutting, you think the bits of timber are free to move around, and that's where you run into problems. So do be very careful before you use a chainsaw. Now with this timber, if you just hit that with a chainsaw, this will grab instantly and you'll have a massive kick. So very dangerous. So what I'd like to do is just show you how we convert this. And I've got several props that I've got done over the last couple of days, just to show you the journey from this to a turnable blank. So I think, Charlie, if you can come in just to focus on this area of this lump here, we're just going to prep this as if we were going to saw it with either a chainsaw or handsaw. If you have no chainsawing experience, don't even attempt this. It's to cut with a chainsaw. Use a handsaw and just a bit of elbow grease, okay? Or if you're like me, I've got a couple of sons, so they can use the elbow grease and cut it for me. So what we're going to do firstly, we need to remove as much of this as possible. This will not allow me to cut with a chainsaw, like I've said. You can do that either by, it's fairly labour intensive, but using a knife and just cutting layer on layer. Remember, under every layer you'll find another layer, so that bit has to be cut, and that'll have to come off. It takes quite a long time, but you will get there in the end. Each layer starts its actual fixing to the timber a little bit further down each time, so you've got to cut just to get rid of it. I tend to go straight for a little hatchet, a little axe, and decide where I want to cut. So I'm going to make around about a 3-inch sort of avenue to cut round, and you're literally just cutting through that wool. I'm not going to do a huge amount because you're going to see exactly what I mean. And what will happen eventually, you'll get to the smooth under bark, and that'll give you a nice little avenue then to get your chainsaw into. Take away any loose debris, and you can see now that we've got solid timber. So that'll give us somewhere to use that chainsaw or handsaw and to be able to cut through. So nice and easy. You'd have to go all the way around it, get rid of all of this loose stuff when you have, and then you can cut away. So that's first stage. Let me just get rid of that while Charlie adjusts the camera. We're going to look at the lathe bed now, so let me just move this out of the way. Charlie, can we swap places? Okay, so that's the big lump. That made me sweat. That's the big lump. Get rid of our cabbage plant. So the stage that we're at, once you cut your billets off, you might find that you have a little bit more to remove. What I tend to then do is, again, with the hatchet. What have I done with the hatchet, Charlie? Ah, got it. With the hatchet, I'm not going to do it on the lathe bed here because otherwise I'll end up hitting things. Get yourself a lump of timber. But basically we're then going to start just cutting down, and that will create a series of little cuts like this, and you'll be taking away this, again, this rough area. If you put that on the lathe or attempt a bandsaw around it, it will clog the bandsaw up very quickly unless this is gone. So don't try and cut the round that way until you've got rid of all this stuff. Okay, so that's your first stage. Second stage would be to get to your complete lump. So that's fine, that you could turn that quite easily. But now we just need to find centre. So I just use a series of discs. This one's cut to 7.5 inches. The disc can go over the top. And then use a marker pen. If you use a bradawl on something quite so soft as this, the bradawl mark sort of disappears as soon as you make it. So a marker pen straight through to the centre, and that will give you a good rough idea of that centre point. Okay, now at the moment this one's going to make a nice hollow form, that sort of thing. I'm going to make a little rice bowl for you today, so I want to be able to cut this. If I was going to use that straight onto the lathe like it is there, I've got one nice straight true 90-degree cut on the bottom, but this one's slightly angled. So rather than sort of risk my hands, my fingers trying to cut it with a mechanical saw, I'm just putting the 90-degree section on the pillar drill and just drill down. That gives me a nice flat that I can then put a prong drive or a tailstock centre on, for instance. So that would prep that ready for a nice hollow form. So that the sort of thing that I'd be looking to do out of that would be something like this. This is a piece of the fan palm that's turned and dried. This particular piece has been textured on the outside, so we've just taken a wire brush to this up and down the grain. I'm going to hold that close. Charlie, you tell me if that's focusing okay on that. Okay, so just a little bit of texturing with a wire brush. It gives quite an interesting, it's like any palm, it's made up of lots of little fibres, little straws bound together, but a really beautiful timber to turn. So that's what that bit would be for, but I want to make a little like a rice bowl. We want to do some airbrushing and stuff like that on it, so I need a slightly smaller piece. So again, we've got two lumps. This was all cut from one piece. Okay, so that's my original piece there, and we've cut it through the middle. That's going to be our rice bowl. Now, once again though, cutting something like that, it's too small to cut with a chainsaw really. It's going to cause you problems to your fingers, your toes, your arms, whatever. You know, it's too close to anything that you're going to be holding with. So what I tend to do, I do cut it on a bandsaw, but if you're going to use a bandsaw, we should know, we never cut a round log freely on a bandsaw. It will skip and potentially take your thumbs with it. So we must be absolutely dead certain that we don't do that on the bandsaw. If you're going to use a bandsaw to cut, then make yourself a cradle. Now basically what happens here, the cradle holds that in position and stops any twisting that's likely. Then you're cutting through this area. Your hands are nowhere near the actual cutting area. Your hands are to one side, and then you can cut through those smaller pieces. This is okay. We're cutting through side grain. You would never cut through a bowl blank that's been cut from a plank of timber. It's not the right orientation. You will have an accident. This is just for limbs, so where you're going to keep your hands out the way, create the cradle nice and safe. Okay, pop that to one side. That cradle literally took about 5 minutes. Yes, well, not even 5 minutes, a couple of minutes to do. So this is what we've got. This is what we're left with. Let me just show you the inside of the fan palm. Again, I'm going to take notes from Charlie here, just to guide me. What an interesting grain that is. It's like a mottled, almost sort of like a porcelain look. Lots of little fibres, little straws together. Now this is going to turn beautifully. I've turned a lot of this. It turns so well off the tool that it's that first time you've successfully made something moment. You know, that real excitement. We're going to turn an airbrush. So I've already showed you the textured one. Here's a couple of pieces of palm. That's a finished little hollow form with some airbrush green on it. You can get some really nice little mottled colours. A little bit of highlighting on the top with a bit of black. Same on the bottom, ready for the signature. This one here is a work in progress, just playing around for demonstration purposes really. Similar sort of, again, a sort of Chinese rice bowl shape. Needs its base taken off shortly, but again, just picked out with a little bit of colour, not hiding the grain of the timber. We're almost highlighting it with that effect, making it again more like pottery, porcelain sort of a look. So let's centre that piece up. We'll get that in the lathe, and we'll just show you how it turns, the beautiful shavings that you get from it. The other thing, because it's so soft, if you've never done any hollow forms before, this is almost a cheating way of doing it, because you can hollow out quite a long way from any support, so a long way from the tool rest, and it still works really nicely. Get rid of that axe. So we're going to use a nice big jumbo drive, and by jumbo drive I mean a big 4-prong drive, so this is bigger than a regular one. Nice big and chunky. Get that in the centre. And in the tailstock, I want to use something with a slightly bigger ring centre than that, so I'm going to go to the Evolution centre. The Evolution centre, it's just got a bigger ring in the middle, so it's far more secure on a soft material. So that can go there. We are going to get some light on the issue in a minute. And there's been a few comments about trying to get a bit closer to the action. So me and Charlie have been talking about this already. When we need to, we're going to work together. We're using one camera, guys, so it will be a little bit shaky just to get it out the mount and closer, but we will get nice and close to the action for you. And once again, please just ask questions. If you have any, shout them out, or shout them out via Facebook. If I don't get to your questions, it doesn't mean to say they won't be answered. You know what it's like now. If you've seen these before, we try and get to them the following day or the next session. Okay, next session is going to be next Tuesday. Okay, again, for anybody that's watching this for the first time, we do them on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4 o'clock. So okay, so visor is an essential here. We're going to rough down the outside first, and then we're going to look at basically just like a normal piece of timber then our process. So hold it and making a hold point, shaping the outside, and then doing the same to the inside. So here goes. So I'm going to start off with quite a big gouge, so a 1/2 inch bowl gouge. Okay, nicely sharpened 1/2 inch bowl gouge. Lathe speed to 0, you know how this works now. Lathe speed to 0 and slowly trickle the speed up. It's a soft material, so don't try and take too big a cut too soon. That's running there at the moment about 800 revs. It's not liking 900 yet, so make sure I'm not going to cover any of my drawers, or fill any of the drawers with shavings.
Is that the AT406 lathe?
It is, yeah, it's the 406. 406. I've had this one now probably for about 4 years. Best lathe I've ever owned. It's the one I teach in at the skill centre as well. The whole fleet of these. They're just nice to use. They're reliable. They're robust. Let's just stop the lathe just to see what we've got at this stage. Okay, yeah, lovely. Charlie, without taking it out the mount, yeah, bring that over just to have a look. As you want to. Bring it out the mount if you want to. Sorry, I'm trying to tell the director how to do his job. But I just wanted you to get a close look at that grain. Uneven clear. Alright, so you can see what's happening there. It's a really pretty timber to work. Okay, we're going to finish this one wet, but I mean, if you wanted to have them do some rough turning, like we've done with you, actually a couple of weeks ago we've done some rough turning. This will dry in probably about 6 weeks. Be prepared though, it moves like crazy. It moves like a bit of eucalyptus. If you've ever turned eucalyptus and let it dry. I've got a couple of pieces over here that have turned, and now they're about as light as polystyrene to work, but they do move really quite well. Don't be put off by the outside skin of those. Once you break through that, they're bright white again on the inside.
What is the wood you're using?
This is fan palm, so Japanese fan palm, woolly palm. Okay. Right then, so we can start making a foot. So we got this palm. If I walked to where the garden that this was growing in, it would take me around about 3 minutes. And some very good friends of ours, the Des, they took a tree down because it was getting close to their telephone lines, and so we benefited from all the timber. It's a good size one, this one. You can see it's around about 8 inches in diameter. There we are, so we'll make our foot. Now, Charlie, let's get in nice and close because we don't need to see me anymore, so let's get close into what's happening.
Is there any wood you wouldn't turn?
There isn't any wood I wouldn't turn. I'll be honest, I'm not keen on the really expensive exotics because of what I do. My style of turning, I don't use it much. It's too expensive for me. It cracks. It's not as nice to turn as these timbers. I'm not keen on the really expensive exotics, so it's just my style of turning, I think. But I love all this sort of stuff. I don't think there's a better timber than our native oak. The palms are beautiful. Yew's a lovely one. Anything really, I enjoy it all. Right, I'm just going to measure my jaws for size, so let's get the calipers. I just want to check this. I want to be really accurate with this. What you'll find, because this is a very soft timber, if you're not accurate with your hole points, you're not going to get a very good join, or connection or grip from the chuck. Right, we'll tidy it up and then we're going to square that off. So you can square it off with anything. Obviously, I love my skew, so we're going to go straight in with a skew, make a nice clean surface. Let's have a check. There, we're good. We're good. Now, we're close for that to fit into the chuck, but not quite. There's a large area there that needs to come away. And before we take this off, before I mount this in the chuck, we're going to take that down a little bit more. I want to now start shaping the bowl itself. I've got loads of timber to play with there. So, let's turn them up a little bit. How was the light? All right there, Charles? I can put the light on if we need to. No, we're good. So this is going to be a little rice bowl, or this is fairly large, two-handed rice bowl actually. And they have, well, this one is going to have a little foot to it, so it's going to be an integral part of the design. Make it a little bit more curvaceous there. I want a little bit more straight. You look at rice bowls; they tend to be very, very curved. There's not that many flat edges about them. Just coming down in size of gouge, something that's sharp.
Do you have a checklist of things to shape, as examples, things like rough then foot, then outside, or then inside?
Just read that again to me, Charlie.
Do you have a checklist of things to shape first? For example, things like rough, then foot, or then outside, or then inside?
Yeah, absolutely. What I'll do is I'll post that on our Facebook page. But if you've got a pen and paper now, generally you've got to hold the blank somehow, whether it's between centres, faceplate, screw chuck, that sort of thing. Form the outside shape, create your hole point. That can be a recess, it can be a foot, that foot can be official, it can be part of the finished design, whichever. That hole point then will be used for the chuck to grip. At that point you can then start hollowing out the centre. Then depending on whether you're finishing the bowl immediately or rough turning, you can then start to sand and reverse the bowl back again either between centres on a push plate or button jaws or wood plates, and clean up the hold point or take that hold point away. That is entirely your thing. But that's the bullet points, the general A to B. We'll get that posted for you as well. But it's a good way to work. But you'll find all the books if you go online and look at tutorials on bowl turning, hollow form making, it'll all be the same sort of process. Right, that's nice. So let's get the speed up, let's get our final shape going. Now you'll notice that I'm turning in a different direction on this piece, because this isn't cut from the side of the tree. This is cut from just the log, so straight through the log. So I'm cutting in the right direction for the grain. Let's go a little bit smaller. What I like to do is leave a shoulder here. That's something for the jaws to butt up against. It's another way of stopping it from undulating when you remount it. I think I'm happy with that. I'm going to hollow out the base, so it's not going to be a flat base. We're going to hollow that out when we turn this one over. And look, what a lovely marking we've got going on here. I think I'm just going to, at this stage, just leave that. We could do a little bit of sanding if we want to. We're not going to really improve it. I think I'll probably get a little bit of texture in there rather than sand. But that's a really pretty timber.
You're using a pull cut, but why not use a push cut? And then when and why would you use each of them?
I tend to use pull cuts for roughing and push cuts for finishing. So that last cut that I've just done there was a push cut. So that was done with the bevel rubbing. Charlie, do you want to bring the camera around a moment? So with the bevel rubbing, come right the way around this one, mate. So with the bevel rubbing, so down there, as I push up the length of the tool, the chisel then wants to slide itself around. A pull cut is literally dragging and pulling the chisel up around. I use the pull cuts as a roughing cut to remove excess timber, but the pull cut tends to be used more for a finishing cut. That's the only difference. Note the difference in grain direction though. Traditionally, if we're cutting from a regular bowl blank, the grain will be running through the piece. Here it's running down the piece, so I can get away with cutting like that. Otherwise I'd have to cut upwards. Okay, so that's just it's the difference of where we've taken our bowl blank from, that's all. Right, I think now guys we'll turn him over. We're not going to do anything else to that. We'll pop the chuck on the lathe. So I'm going to use, this is a soft material, so I'm going to use some fairly big jaws. Okay, we're going to use what's referred to as Dove H's. These are big, I say big gripper jaws, they're gripper jaws with a large depth to them. So not massive in diameter.
Oh, you've got 20 minutes left.
20 minutes, right, okay. They're not massive in diameter, but they are deep. So that with all of these serrations in there, we get a good amount of grip. And then just a couple of turns and make sure we're in line. That's good. You know you've got a secure grip when you've got all that surface area from those serrations in there. So I want to be just below center, Charlie. The angle I want here is just there. Perfect. You're going to get covered in shaving. Okay, so lathe speed back down to 0. I'm going to add a bit of light just for my own benefit here, so I can see what I'm doing. Hope that doesn't bleed out too much. We're going to start by clearing the top of the top surface of that that blank away. So, and then we'll reveal what the timber looks like. It's really quite nice. Let's have a look at that. What lovely markings. A little bit of a lip there. We'll just take one more cut off to get rid of that. But you've got these lovely little little pimples, really. They're really pretty. There we are. So now we can start hollowing. So starting in the centre. Got to about that point. If I carry on making those cuts, what's going to happen is that I'm going to go through the bottom of the bowl, and obviously we don't want that to happen, so I'm going to start making the same cut but stopping at the depth that we've got there. Now let me turn the camera down, the light down a level so we don't get too much glare.
There's quite a long question here, but someone is turning a teak bow and the long grain is perfect, but they're having a few problems with very fine tear out on the end grain. Any ideas how to overcome?
Yeah, when you're doing your when you're doing your push cut, your final cuts, I hope you can see this. Just try putting a secondary bevel on your gouge. If we're talking about the inside of the bowl, that will really help. Secondary bevels on the inside of gouges presents then a convex curve to a concave finish on the inside, so you get more support for your cutting edge. Failing that, shear scraping will be a good one, a nice fine shear scrape, so you're almost using your scraper then as a skew chisel. That will really help you and calm everything down. Look how wonderful the finish is here. It's such a lovely timber, pleasing timber to work with.
Any recommendations for oils that won't change the colour of the wood?
Food safe oil. I tend to use chestnut food safe oil. It's it's colourless, it's odourless. It has none of the amber that you get from a lot of other oils like finishing oils, that sort of thing. So food safe oil, which generally are neutral in colour, mineral oils basically, that would be my best advice. Food safe oil. Okay, so let's start the shaping. We may have to move the camera in a minute. Take the camera back, Charlie. Let's have a look at one of these nice streamers that's coming back. And you'll notice where I'm stood as well. I've got a bit of a bad back at the moment, so I'm trying not to bend my back too much. So I'm right over the other side of the lathe, or the end of the lathe. Now I don't know whether you can hear that. It's starting to get a little bit of vibration. It's a soft timber. We've taken a lot of mass away. So I'm going to start supporting the back of the bowl, and I'm not going to cut down any further. I'm going to cut down to that depth. Start pinching for thickness now. I want to start getting that thickness nice and even. So I'm a little bit thick the further down I go, so let's clean that up. Have another look.
When you start each of those howling cuts, how do you avoid the gouge being kicked left?
The hollowing cuts?
Yeah.
You've got an option there. That kicking is coming directly from, as I touch on, the point of the gouge that makes contact is just below the centre. So if you think about it, if we're presenting that flute at say 2 o'clock, as you go into centre, or even up towards sort of 1 o'clock, that cutting edge is being presented at an angle. If you want to stop that from happening and avoid using a parting tool, parting tools tend to tear. If you turn the flute right the way over, just to start with, you then present an dead upright cutting edge. That won't give you a massive cut, but it will start the cut. So nice and gentle. Once you've got that shoulder that you can then push the bevel against, you can revert back to your 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock and push and complete the cut. And that will stop that rake out. It happens most of the time on your final cut, because that's where you're tense. That's where you're concentrating the most, and of course it's going to happen on the final cut. There we are. Let's carry on. So taking the inside out now. Now we're in control. I can see the depth. I can start pinching for thickness. Let's just have another check. So again, we're getting a little bit thicker the further down I go. I don't want that. I want it to be an even thickness. The good thing with this timber, because it's soft, is that it'll dry most of the time without splitting. Sort of carries the movement. It can go an odd shape, but that, for this type of timber, that's part of the charm. Still a little bit thicker down there. Let's get rid of that. There we go, that's going to do it for the minute. So, move the centre. Is that light affecting anything, Charlie? Shall I turn it off? You're okay? Stop, we're going to check, we'll look with our fingers first just to make sure, and then have a good look, inspection with your eyes, get those in there. I think we're there on that piece for the moment. Let's, again, Charlie, do you want to get the camera in there? Look at those wonderful markings. And that's not me, that the ease of cut was nothing to do with me, that's the timber. It's that nice to work. I'll turn the light, or move the light for you. That's about that. Really pretty, almost bamboo looking, I would have said, to be fair. Very common, like I say, very common in this country. You'll see it all over the place. Like most timber that you know, that's free, you've got to be in the right place at the right time. Not everybody's willing to let you have it, but there. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of work on this. Let's say that you didn't want to just leave it bare timber. Normally I would only do this with dry versions. So if I was going to leave it to dry, I would want to leave it a bit thicker than what I've done there. That's finished size really. That would be the size to finish a dry piece. Let it dry, then return it. You'll get that, but dry. Then you can start dyeing it. I'm going to carry on and dye this anyway. We'll pretend that it's a finished nice dry bowl. If I was going to leave it as wet and a finished piece, I probably wouldn't dye it. I'd let it sort of stay its natural colour. There wouldn't be a huge amount of sanding to do on this timber. It doesn't leave many tooling marks. It's you know, it's a nice timber to use. Let's just do a little bit of actually, while we're talking about finishing, let's just do a little bit of texturing to the back just to show you what happens. If you're going to texture, I would use a brass brush. Steel brushes on this are a little bit too much. Now you can either do that, or you can turn the machine on and have a little bit of, just a little bit of a rub. This is a suede brush, a little brass brush. Keep working it, and eventually you'll build up a similar sort of texture to the one that I showed you back there. It takes a little bit of time. Basically what you're doing is taking away the soft areas in between those dark speckles. But it works really well. You get a lovely, lovely finish.
5 minutes.
5 minutes till 45 minutes. We're going to go on a little bit longer then today. So a little bit longer. I want to get this finished for everyone. So I'm going to look at some airbrushing. So if you remember last, what was it? It's Tuesday, wasn't it? We're using these airbrushes. Just back a little bit, Charlie, just so I'll explain this and then we'll go back to normal. So we're going to use the SP50. So the SP50s is my bulk amount of airbrushes, as it were. So I did explain on Tuesday that because I do quite a lot of airbrushing, I like to have suction fed, because then I can, you see from my array of airbrushes here, I have a different colour, different brush for each colour. They house a good amount of ink, so I can just with a quick release join here, I can just quickly go between colours. If you're only doing a little bit of airbrushing every now and again, just go with a single airbrush, but use a gravity fed one. So you can put a couple of drops in the top, spray, clean it, other couple of drops of another colour, spray, and you're ready to go, sort of thing. Otherwise you'll be there for ages cleaning out if you're trying to use this, a single one of these. But let's start. Let's do a blue. Let's do a blue and a slightly black. So blue, SP50. This one, I've got this all rigged up to about 30 psi. And this is what we refer to as a dual action airbrush. So we press down here for air supply, and then we pull the trigger back for the amount of ink to come out. The further back you pull the trigger, the more colour you get coming through. You can limit the amount of colour, because all that's doing, I'm not going to pull the trigger back yet until I'm working, so air, and then it's pulling this back, that's the needle, and in this back shield here, that's simply a screw, so you can advance the screw on or advance the screw back, and that limits the amount of play you get in that needle. That's the simple explanation of how that works. I like to have full use of it so I can get some really depth in colour if I need it. So we're going to start with a nice slow speed.
Do you own an old school treadle lathe?
I do.
And would you ever think of doing a demo with it?
I used to. Now, when I moved into this house, fate, whatever you call it, the bottom of the garden, there was an old shed. In that shed was an old Oliver treadle lathe, steel with a big flywheel. I took it into Axminster Tools, where I work, and one of the lads there basically done it up, so renovated it, and it now stands outside the skills centre at Axminster Tools. I demonstrated on it. I can only demonstrate for about 20 minutes before my leg starts to drop off. It's that labour intensive. The lightest touch, the amount of extra pressure you have to put in with your leg, you end up walking around in circles after a day's worth of using that one. So yeah, that's my answer. It's Oliver. There's an American company all famous for making tractors, and they branched into lathes back in the 1920s. There we are. So yes. There we are. A little bit slower. Let's have some extraction on, Charlie. I don't want to be breathing this in. So lift the red button. So a little bit of blue. I'm going to allow that blue to bleed out a little bit. Same at the top. This is a rice bowl, so it's going to start looking a little bit more like porcelain. So we're going to add a black to that now.
Is the paint easily removed from the lathe, bed and chuck?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Is the paint easily removed from the lathe, bed and chuck? So I'm using chestnut spirit stain, so it's a wood stain. I was doing a little bit of practicing this morning actually, we were working on another piece. And I clean the jaws off with methylated spirits. That's the same way you thin it down if you need to. But Bit of meth, it's the same on the bed of the lathe, and it comes off instantly. There.
It's been 45 minutes.
It's been 45 minutes. Okay, we're just going to reverse this round, do the base, and that one's going to be done. The whole idea with Spirit Stain, or sorry, the whole idea with Airbrush is that the colour goes on dry. That's the whole basis behind using it. That's why I like using it so much. So you can basically overspray it every time. So we've gone from blue, we've oversprayed with a black. This is soaking wet, so I will have to do something to it once you guys have gone and let it dry a little bit more, then I'll respray it. But basically we're going to look at now just reversing and what we're going to do to that base. So I think we've got push plates. We've looked at push plates. Let's use, I'm not going to mess around with button jaws. We don't have the time, so we are going to go back with a pair of push plates. So if you remember what a push plate is, it's a flat piece of engineered timber. That can be plywood, it could be MDF, with a layer of router matting just bonded onto the surface with contact adhesive would be the best thing. Let's pop that to one side a minute. Contact adhesive is the best thing. I use that all the time. It's one of those frequently used things in the workshop. Now my options, as well as a push plate, the options are to use something like button jaws, and I'm going to show you a set of button jaws, and wood plates. I've used wood plates with you on the piece of jewellery last week, so I'm going to get a set of those just to show you though. But this is my push plate. Okay. Button jaw. So a button jaw, okay, button has 8 soft buttons running around its outer edge. You alternate or reposition the buttons to suit the diameter of your bowl. If you one of those here, let's have a look at that one. That's a chuck already set up with a set of wood plate jaws. Wood plate jaws are great because with wood plates you buy the metal piece and then you design and shape the jaws to suit the work you're doing. So that's a big one for bowls and for bangles. And smaller version there for jewellery. Another version there that we used for our pendant last week. I think it was, week before maybe. I'm getting a little time sign from Charlie here, so I'm going to crack on and we're just start to finish the base. Nice and slow, don't want to go too fast with this. There we are. That's nice and sound, so right the way down without speed. I'm going to go to a small bowl gouge. Don't forget, you can still go through the bottom of a bowl from the underside, so always check. I'm just checking the bowl there, it's just coming a little bit loose. That's better. are. So I just wanted to hollow the underside of that a little bit. Of course, if you had a set of wood plates or button jaws on there, then you could do a little bit more to that. You can go in with even more detail. I'm just remembering, or not, just reminding you that this is a soft material. I'm not going to chance it too much, so let's go there. We'll use a little pool saw. It's only fitting. We use a Japanese pool saw to take off this Japanese rice bowl. This is a lovely little flush cut saw, this one. A Shikunin pool flush cut saw. But it's nice and flexible. And I'm just keeping it away from the bowl. I'm looking down that cut. Ever so quick in cutting. There we go, that's enough. I need to release some of that pressure. There we are. Now at that point, I can start thinking about removing this. Now, if I'm honest here, I'd use my carving chisel and I'd start carving away. Like like turning of it, it will carve beautifully. So I'd carve that away and then go for my little sanding disc again. So go for one of the small sanding discs and use that either in the lathe or on the power drill just to take that away, and a little bit of sanding. I wouldn't change the colour of that. I like to keep those white, even though this colour here is a lovely contrast. And if you're going to sign your work, then it gives you a good canvas to sign your work on. So there we are. That's our little Chinese rice bowl. Charlie's just going to move the camera back so we can get a better view. Alright, so that's our little Japanese rice bowl, made from a bit of Japanese fan palm. Remember the safety aspect of preparing this timber for use. But you don't have to use fan palm. You can use any timber, a bit of sycamore, a bit of maple, something pale so you're not covering up that beautiful timber. But we're enhancing those lovely speckles on this piece. And when you sort of compare the colours together, they really do sort of lend themselves to being coloured, this type of thing. Like we're trying to replicate porcelain pottery. And that's where a lot of wood turners are going to take their inspiration from. The fluid shapes you get through pottery, in pottery books, that sort of thing, are really useful for a wood turner. Right guys, I'm going on a long time, probably one of the longest ones that we've done so far. So I do need to end on a very, very positive note. And I'm going to read this out because I can't remember it from word for word anyway. So this has come from the guys at Axminster. This is a bit of an insight of what's happening tonight. So tonight at 8:15, we're going to be auctioning off the Skills Centre at Home creations. So the things that I've been making, you're able to view them online and put bids if you want to bid for one. All the proceeds that that are going to come from this auction are going to be donated to National Health Service charities. So together, all the charities together to help those on the front line during obviously the difficult times we're going through at the moment. We'd love for you to get involved. We really love your support that you're showing us by watching. But if you could dip your hand in your pocket and bid on the piece you like the most, this is your chance. So this is going to be held, the auction is going to be held on eBay store, on the eBay store, on our eBay store, the Axminster eBay store, and all the details and the link are going to be on our Facebook page at 8:15 tonight. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. So that's 8:15 on our Facebook page. You're going to have all the links and the details of the eBay auction. So that's all the pieces we've been doing, all the resin bowls. We've done 3 resin bowls in all. We've done the nice U-pot, the apples and pears, the pendant. So please help, obviously, us support the NHS and doing the amazing work they're doing. Get your hand in your pocket and spend your money. So until Tuesday, guys, same time, same place, 4 o'clock in my workshop. Have a wonderful weekend.